Hi y'all, my name's Arushi. I just graduated high school from Georgia in May. So I've had a lot of friends and family like asking me about my journey, where I'm going, what happened, and advice for people who are younger than me who are still going through that high school journey and deciding whether they want to go to college and like where they want to go and how they want to apply. So first off, I'm going to Georgia Tech and I'm really happy. That was my number two school. So I was super happy with that. And my number one was definitely a reach school. And I only applied to one safety school, and the rest of mine were, and then I applied to two matches, and the rest were reaches. And honestly, I got in that way. I got into my safety and I got into my matches, but I didn't get into my reaches. So I'll go through what I did, what I kind of might have done differently. But one thing is, I am a meticulous planner. Like, that's always been me. And I started planning what I wanted to do around eighth grade, where I wanted to go. I always knew I wanted to pursue like computer science because it was something I'd been exposed to from a young age and always thought it was super like cool. And I'm a bit geeky and I felt like I fit with that culture. And so far, it hasn't done me wrong. I've only taken one CS class and I don't know programming, to full transparency, but I still got in as a CS major to all these colleges. So first off, all these colleges, which ones? So I applied to 10, which is I think a good number. I don't think you should apply to any more than that because you really start to like burn out in terms of your creativity. You don't want to reuse essays because it doesn't fit as well. I know that's not what you want to hear, but you shouldn't reuse essays if you can avoid it. So I'm just going to open my Common App to make sure that I'm telling you all the right colleges. When I was in eighth grade doing the research, I was like, oh, MIT, Caltech, CMU, because these are like the top names in CS. But when I actually started to do research, I was like, these schools don't really fit with my personality because they are very STEM focused, but their humanities programs definitely suffer. And I love humanities. Like, I love history. It was my favorite subject in high school. AP World was like my favorite class, period. Like, so I could go into a whole video about why I love history, about like trends and stuff like that. But I'll discuss more about my individual classes when I get to my course load. Yeah, so I ended up not going to applying to MIT or Caltech because I felt I wouldn't fit in with that rigorous kind of competitive theoretical structure, whereas I wanted to study practical computer science always. I didn't want to study theory. Well, obviously some theory to get like a well-rounded understanding, but I didn't want my focus to be on theoretical computer science. So yeah, I ended up applying to CMU because I love their program, even though they're more well-rounded than MIT and Caltech in my opinion. They have other schools which do really well, such as the CMU Business School. So I ended up applying there for regular decision, and I did not get in. I applied to Cornell for regular decision, and I got deferred and eventually rejected. I applied for CS to everything, by the way. Georgia Tech, I applied early, and I got in for a CS major, and that's where I'm going. And then Harvard, I applied regular, got deferred, and then rejected. And then Princeton, I got rejected. And honestly, in my opinion, it was a mistake for me applying to Princeton because I like wrote half of the application and then I was reading and researching more about the university and I was like, this doesn't feel like a good fit for me because their computer science program does lean into more of the theoretical stuff, which I'm not a fan of. But I felt like I reached the point of no return. I'd already put a bunch of effort in, so I was like, let me just apply. So that's one thing. Research is important before you make your list and before you start applying. Don't just go based on stats and names because then you'll eventually get your decision back. And let's say you do get in and you realize you don't really want to go. Like, that's kind of a waste of effort on your end, you know? So then I applied Stanford restrictive early action. This was my number one choice. Honestly, even if I got in, I might not have gone because of tuition, but it's crazy expensive out of state and it's private. But yeah, Stanford has an amazing CS program. I went on a tour when I visited my family in Cali, and it was amazing. Like, I fell in love with it. But I wasn't crushed because I also really liked Georgia Tech. Like, they were pretty at par for me. Stanford just had that extra level of prestige, which at the end of the day is something. And so that was the reason it was my number one. There is a little bit of like bragging and saying, oh, I can get into this Ivy League level school. So that was that. But I didn't get in. UGA, I applied early and I got in for CS, but again, I wasn't in love with UGA, but I needed a safety school just in case. So UGA was my safety school. And then I applied to UIUC regular or early. I applied early and I did not get in. Michigan, I applied early and I got in. I actually really fell in love with Michigan when I was writing that essay, because the more I was researching, the more I was vibing with campus. But the reason it would never beat Georgia Tech for me is their programs are pretty comparable, and Georgia Tech gives me in-state tuition and in-state scholarships, which Michigan did not. I think it was like triple the cost, and for at-par programs. So yeah, so those were like the 10 colleges I applied to. Now, stats. What were like my stats? Because stats aren't important, but just to give you a background if you're curious. I believe I took around 12-ish APs and then like 3 or 4 dual enrollments. I will like list out my courses in this like next section. You can skip ahead if you're not interested. And I graduated with a 4.4 GPA, and I was ranked 6 in my school. Yeah, and so I actually could have probably been competitive with Val. Val is actually one of my good friends, and he and I were like comparing course loads, and like I had room in my schedule to take more APs, but I'll be honest, I just didn't want to, because at that point I had so like at the beginning, like first semester, you're still kind of applying around Christmas and stuff. I think I turned in my very last application the day before Christmas, and then I was done. I was like, I'm not applying anywhere else for anything. So yeah, I digress. I got a little bit rambly there, but I feel like things like that, like Val is useful in terms of scholarships though. So if you're looking to do that, I would say look into that. Yeah, so those were my ranks, and then now let's go into my course load. Let me open my transcript so I don't misquote anything. I'm just going to go through my APs, because everything, if it wasn't an AP or dual, it was on level. So freshman year, I took it easy with just one AP, and I took AP World. Absolutely loved this class. Had an amazing teacher. Really got to learn about trends. So history people think is boring, but I have always been fascinated by it, about human condition and trends over time, and how despite civilization spanning the world and being so different culturally, there's some similarities and there's also some differences, and how trade influences each other, and how similar inventions change the trajectory of different nations in different time periods. And there's a lot of comparison and contrast which goes on in this class, and a lot of essay writing, and my favorite class. I loved it so much. I've been told this is an unpopular opinion by literally all of my friends. They said it was a really difficult class, so take what I say with a grain of salt. I am a history buff. That is a subject I enjoy. That was freshman year. Sophomore year was my COVID year, and I was all virtual, which I feel like is actually changed the classes I was going to take. So I took 3 APs. I took AP Psych. Oh, by the way, I'm going to give you scores as well. So I got a 5 on my AP World exam. And then, so sophomore year, I took AP Psych, AP Computer Science Principles, and something else. Let me see. Oh, AP US History. And so I got a 5 on APUSH, I got a 5 on Psych, and I got a 4 on Computer Science Principles. So that was sophomore year. It was a bit different for me because of COVID, but yeah. Because originally I was planning on taking Physics 1 sophomore year, so I didn't want to take that online at all. I really wanted an in-person teacher, and my physics teacher was amazing because I had him both junior and senior year. So my junior year, I took a crazy course load. And I did have a social life. Like, I felt like my life was pretty well balanced, but I was studying a lot, like every day. Every day I'd spend 2-3 hours minimum, sometimes more like 5-6 hours a day studying for my classes, because I just had such a heavy course load. But I still have really fond memories of junior year. Like, we did Secret Santa, my friend group and I, we went on a picnic, and we all like de-stressed, and it was fun. But keep in mind, your social life will decrease. But my friend group, we all pretty much had a very rigorous load that year, so everyone's kind of social battery decreased for sure. And there's a certain sense of oh gosh, I'm stumbling over my words, like camaraderie, in everyone being in that kind of high pressure situation. But honestly, looking back at it, it was a lot of fun. Like, I have some really special memories from those classes. So now, what were those like crazy classes? I think I took 6 APs that year. I took macro, micro, calc ABBC. I took AP Chem, AP Physics 1, AP Gov, and I think those are the 6. So those are the 6 AP classes I took that year. So for scores, I got a 5 on calc, I got a 3 on chem, I got a 4 on gov, I got a 5 on macro, a 4 on micro, a 4 on physics 1. So those were my scores for that year. And now I can actually see what credit I get. I get credit for every single AP I've taken except for chem. So I'm doing pretty well. I think I have like 40 something credits already in tech. So I'm considered like a sophomore in terms of my course load, which is really nice when you're taking these AP exams. That's why I took a lot of them. Not just for stats, like it generally saves you money because now I can do internships or co-ops in college because I don't have to take these credits. One con is I'm looking at my freshman course schedule and it's very much like 4 CS classes per semester. I don't have a lot of like fluff quote unquote classes, which is like a break. So that is one thing to keep in mind if you get all your credits done in high school. So that was junior year. So junior year is kind of where you apply with your junior year stats. So I believe my GPA was like a 4.2 or a 4.3, and I was ranked 7 when I applied to all these colleges. So that's the information they had. And then my senior year, I took AP Art History online because my school didn't offer any more history and I wanted to take it. And I took AP Physics 1 online. Then first semester, I took dual enrollment with Georgia Tech and I took linear algebra. Second semester, I continued with dual enrollment with Georgia Tech and I took multivariable calculus and I took one more class. Oh, CS like 101. I forgot what it's called. I think it's 1300, something like that. But it's like introduction to CS, which kind of everyone takes. So that's actually been my only like true like CS class, which I've done. So I have very little actual practical experience in computer science. Yeah, so that was that. So that's my educational stats. And also senior year AP exam scores are not out yet. I'm waiting on those. I'll write them in the description, all these stats if you're interested. So then the next thing, that was academics. Now let's talk about clubs. There were 3 clubs I was a really big part of during high school. So Science Olympiad, I started when I moved to Georgia in 4th grade, and I ended up doing it till my senior year and spent 9 years doing that. So I really got to know a lot of people running Science Olympiad, my old coach from middle school, the Georgia Science Olympiad coordinator, and I got to shoot a promo video about people joining Science Olympiad my senior year. I helped run middle school invitationals and state competitions as a high schooler, which was really fun. Like this year I ran solar system, so I got to write the test and proctor it, and like it was a lot of fun. I felt old doing that because I used to be their age, and like how did I grow up so fast? I don't remember feeling that young when I was taking these exams. So yeah, that was Science Olympiad. So Science Olympiad, I kind of got a mentorship role just from seniority. I didn't have like an official, like I wasn't club president. That was one of my close friends. She was club president. And so Science Olympiad was something really fun. On a similar vein, I was president of Science National Honor Society. I founded it my junior year. And that was about getting people excited to give back about science in the community. So volunteering, teaching others, recycling. We ran all of our school recycling through SNHS. So I was president and founder of that club. The third club is FBLA. FBLA, which is huge in my school. I think we had like 300-ish members. And I competed junior and senior year, I believe. Yeah, junior and senior year. So my junior year, I competed in insurance and risk management, and I got to go to the national level in the national competition in Chicago and placed 8th there. And then my senior year, I competed in management information systems, and I qualified for nationals, but I won't be going. It's actually next week, but I will be out of town. So at the time of recording this video, I don't know when I'll get around to uploading this. It'll probably be much later. So yeah, that was FBLA. So those were the 3 clubs I was really involved in. I wouldn't say go much higher than 3 or 4 clubs because colleges care about depth over breadth any day. Like they want to see you be really involved with the clubs you choose. And honestly, you won't have time if you have a rigorous course load or if you're doing other things, like you won't have time to be involved with more than 3 clubs. Even 3 was like a lot because FBLA, I was a member my freshman and sophomore year, but I don't think I really participated that much. So yeah, there's that. What else was I doing? Oh, volunteering. I loved volunteering so much. So I volunteered at my library for about 600 hours, I think. I don't know. I stopped logging around 300. But I spent my summers there. I was shelving books, I was running programs. I'm really good friends with all our librarians now. The library is a magical place. Please get involved. help out your local library, support them, check out books. I'm a huge advocate for libraries now, and I truly love reading, so that was some place which felt like home. Like, the library is actually my second home, so I'm definitely gonna miss that when I go to tech. And that was one of my biggest cons on my Georgia Tech list, is they don't have like nice libraries, because a lot of these older schools have crazy nice libraries. Even CMU, oh my gosh, they have like a library in the basement, so cool. And they have like they have like old artifacts. So Georgia Tech doesn't have that. Actually, most of their books are in a warehouse, and you can like get an ebook instantly and request a physical copy, which kind of I felt really like disenchanted by. That was literally the only con I had for Georgia Tech, is their libraries are not the greatest. But yeah, I volunteered at the library. I also volunteered at a food pantry. That was a really cool experience. It was run by a local church, and they had an aquaponic farm as well. So I got to like plant seedlings and harvest some vegetables as well, as long with the actual food pantry. And then those were like my volunteer, where I was volunteering at other places. And then around 8th grade, actually, I opened a business. It was called Wholesome Whisk. I've closed since then because I don't have a kitchen, but I love to bake. And so I would bake goods and sell them. And then all the proceeds I would donate to that same food pantry, which I volunteered at. So that was really cool. And I believe I raised around $1,000 for them, which was incredible. I never thought it would go that far. I also got national coverage on GMA, which I believe is also posted on this channel, which was like mind-blowing. Like, I never thought it would go that far. So to like learn more about what that was, go over there. So yeah, those were kind of like the big things I did during high school. Not athletic, did no sports. I have not a single athletic bone in my body. I'm trying to think, what else did I do? Those were like the big strokes. So now, what did I write about? So my Common App essay, I am ridiculously proud of. I'm actually really proud of most of these essays. They took a lot of time, thought, energy, emotions. So my Common App essay, when I was in Science Olympiad in middle school, I was in this event called Rocks and Minerals, where you had like a list of maybe 100, I don't remember anymore, rocks and minerals, and you have to be able to identify them, either by picture, or you'd actually have like a specimen and had to be able to identify it. Sulfur is the easiest. It's yellow and it stinks. The rest of them kind of start to blend together, but you learn what to look for. Like, this is igneous, metamorphic, sedimentary, and then you go like deeper and you're like, oh, if I've classified it as this, it could be this based on colors, textures. So that was actually a really fun event. And so I was like reminiscing about that one night and also thinking about what I should write my essay on. And I like fell asleep and kind of had like an epiphany, and I like woke up in the middle of the night and wrote this on my notes, and it's like, I am a rock. And I woke up and I'm like, what does that mean? And I was like trying to think what was in my thought, because I thought of a really good idea. And I was thinking about how when I was in middle school and I was a 6th grader, I really loved igneous rocks. They were my favorite. I loved that they were formed in like an explosion of lava. They were molded in like one crazy event, and that's how they were created. But now, as I like think about it, my favorite rock is a sedimentary rock. They're formed slowly over time, and they're filled with layers. And so I took those ideas and created a comparison to myself, that I'm not an igneous rock which is forged in one event, because the Common App essay is about like this one event which like changed your life most of the time. But I said, that's not me. I wasn't forged in one event. There isn't one specific thing in my life. I'm only 18, which stood out to me. And at the time I was like 17 or 16. No, I was 17. I was 17 when I was writing these essays. There's not one specific event which stands out to me. I'm made of layers. I'm like a sedimentary rock. I will be, and like I'm forged over time, right? So that was one thing which I like that idea. And so each paragraph, so I opened with that story for Science Olympiad, very condensed, 2 sentences, because you are on a word limit. And then each paragraph I would compare, like, the first layer of the sedimentary rock could be made by a roaring river. The roaring river in my life is X. And then I talked about something really important to me. Then I talked about a different thing. Let's see, I'm trying to think what else I did. Maybe this ice cracking in the rock destroys it once more so it can be reborn. And I talk about like different, again, I'm completely paraphrasing, but that was what my Common App essay was, how it was written and how it was structured. And in the end, I talked about how I was. And I didn't use this quote, but one of my favorite quotes is by Walt Whitman. Sorry, guys. Walt Whitman. I'm full of contradictions. So what? Again, paraphrasing, that's not exactly what the quote is, but that whole entire poem is gorgeous, and that was really what I was trying to convey. He said it better than I ever could, so go read that poem if you're interested. I believe, oh gosh, I'm on the spot here. I put myself on the spot. Let me just Google what that poem is. Song of Myself 51 by Walt Whitman. Yep, and the quote is, do I contradict myself? Very well then, I contradict myself. I am large, I contain multitudes. And that was the theme I went with for my Common App essay. That was really what I was channeling, because I love poetry and English as well, which is what I'm saying. Like, humanities is a huge part of my kind of personal life, even if it isn't part of my like main life. I'm gonna cut this video and come back though, because we're at the 20-minute mark and it's hard to upload videos when they're longer. Okay, I'm back. So we just talked about like my Common App essay, and so I was thinking maybe I talk about a couple other essays. I honestly think my best supplemental was Stanford, and it did get rejected. But I'm still so proud of it. Like, there's not a single thing I would change from my application. Like, I showed my true authentic self. So the hard thing about some of these Ivies is that they give you like these 2-sentence prompts, and one of them I remembered was like, if you could go back in time, where would you go? And so I said the ISS space station, because my dream forever has been to work for NASA. And the only time I doubted doing computer science is when I thought about doing aerospace. But I realized I wanted to work at NASA, not necessarily do aerospace engineering and become like a rocket scientist. I still wanted to do CS. I just would love to be in the control room of a successful mission and feel that emotion, that team camaraderie. Like, there's nothing quite like it when you as a team succeed in something. So again, that's my dream. I'll maybe keep you updated. My goal is to get a NASA internship eventually in my life, or work there. That is a big goal of mine. So yeah, I digress. So I wrote a couple things for Stanford about that. And then what are your like, there was one which was like, maybe not Stanford, or a lot of the Ivies had similar prompts, but I like answered differently because they're all slightly changed. But one of them was like, what is your favorite thing? And I talked about bibliacre. It's the smell of books, smell of old books. And bibliacre is actually a really new word, and it's not present in all dictionaries. It's kind of an internet word which has come into being maybe 10-15 years ago, and it's Ichor is the blood of the gods. Again, I'm a huge literature fan, so I knew that because I love reading Greek classic myths, and that's where it comes from. And then bibli obviously is the prefix meaning books. So it's the blood of books, which is also kind of crazy to think about. So just that random quirky fun fact, which you never thought would be useful, will be useful in your college essay. And I am one of those people who's like, fun fact of the day, dad jokes. Like, that's kind of my personality. So like, it's coming back to me. Stanford had another essay which is like, introduce yourself to your roommate. And so there I talked about I'm into Star Wars, Marvel, I'm very geeky, I like puns. I opened with a pun about this joke being too cheesy. And like, speaking of cheese, I love to eat food, and I'm a huge foodie and baker, and I talked about all that. And that was very colloquial, and I enjoyed that essay because it really was like I was just texting a friend. Then one essay was, the third essay I believe for Stanford was like, what is important to you? And that one kind of stumped me for a while until I was talking to my grandfather in India, and he said a phrase which he said all my life: Than, man, dhan. So that means strength, mind, and wealth. And basically these are the 3 things you need to survive in life and thrive and do well. You need strength physically to take care of yourself so you can take care of others. You also need strength of heart and mind. Mind needs to be sharp and at its peak so that you can thrive in this world. And you need wealth. You need enough money to survive, not necessarily to be rich. And you also need a wealth of experience. Wealth isn't just in the monetary sense. It's a wealth of life, if that makes sense. So I kind of talked about my grandfather and family and religion and spiritualism in that essay, which was really like, that essay kind of changed me a little bit. Like, I had quite a few epiphanies writing it, and that took me a while. A lot of emotion went into that essay. So that was Stanford, just a few here and there, just to give you ideas. Like, because I was stumped when I was writing these. I was like, what in the world? How do I condense all these emotions and thoughts, which I'm like rambling to you and very easily talking to you face to face? How do I make them flow in words without going over the word limit or without being too succinct and not explaining everything? So that was something I struggled with. Like, I feel like I interviewed really well. I did do some interviews, but I'll do a completely separate video on that because most people don't need to worry about those. Yeah. So that was Stanford. I'm trying to think what are some other essays which I like absolutely loved. My Georgia Tech supplemental. So Georgia Tech has always been in my blood. My aunt went to Georgia Tech. She got her master's from there. I remember attending her graduation when I was 6. Absolutely terrified of the mascot Buzz, but I have a picture with him. And Georgia Tech has always been like, I want to go there. Like, that was the first school I ever wanted to go to when I was little because my aunt went there. And then as I grew to like CS and stuff, Georgia Tech has always been like up there. Stanford very like recently made the top of my list, but it used to be Georgia Tech #1 all the time, so I guess it's fate. Yeah, so my Georgia Tech essay was A Story of Two Adas. That was the opening line, because my two inspirations for computer science is Ada Lovelace and my aunt, who had a professor that she always talked about who was also named Ada, and I would love to study under this professor. So I talked about how my story at Georgia Tech is A Tale of Two Adas, which is again a literary reference on A Tale of Two Cities. Yeah, so I didn't realize how many literary references I made in my essays until I started talking about it. But yeah, so that was kind of what my essays were about. So then, I'm thinking what else. So yeah, that was like my opening line, and I talked about Ada Lovelace and how I said I was exposed to CS in a young age, but my aunt and uncle took me to this museum. It was the Computer Science History Museum of California when I was 8. And they had a temporary exhibition, I believe, on Ada Lovelace. And they had her portrait blown up, and she was wearing this really pretty dress. She had like piercing brown eyes, and I remember it so vividly because it felt like she was looking at me. And I kind of found a kindred soul in her, and I read all about her, and she kind of became a role model to be a woman in a male-dominated field, to revolutionize things. So she's considered the mother of algorithms. So she kind of created what is considered the first algorithm. There were no computers at the time. Also, fun fact, her father is Lord Byron, the literary genius, which I did not know until like I started researching about her again for these essays. So I didn't include all that, obviously, but that's just where the Tale of Two Adas came from. And so that was my tech essay. That was like the opening. And then I talked about other things, extracurriculars, sprinkled in, answering why. Because I don't remember the exact prompt, but it was something like why CS and why CS at Georgia Tech specifically versus any other college. It was why Georgia Tech and why CS. So that was a fun essay to write. Let's see. My Michigan essay was so good. I don't even know how to explain it because they gave the craziest word limit. They gave you so many words, and I really thrived with that. I just kept talking. I just kept talking about everything I love there, and the Michigan website is one of the best college websites, in my opinion, because they give so much information about their programs, and you just get to learn about the school and like actual things like professors, classes they teach, topics, how the classes work, versus a lot of other schools was just marketing fluff. I'm like, I want the classes and the programs that can take care. So Michigan's website was top tier. I absolutely loved it. And that essay like just came to me because I was able to do fruitful research. Whereas some of the other schools, their websites were so sparse. Like I couldn't learn about the programs I wanted to because there wasn't information on the web available to the public. So my Michigan essay I really liked. Let's see, Harvard. Oh my gosh. So for Harvard, the supplemental, they basically had a bunch of prompts and they're like, write whatever you want. And I really liked my Harvard prompt. So I actually applied to Harvard on a whim. My mom's like, hey, you've applied to all these other schools, why not Harvard? And I was like, I don't know why not. And then I did. So like, excuse me, I need to sneeze. Okay, I sneezed, I'm back. Sorry about that. Have a slight little cold allergy season. Anyway. So my mom was like, why not Harvard, to continue my story? And I was like, I don't know why not. And so I wrote that essay in like a fever dream. Like I just sat down and I wrote it because I felt so inspired, because at the time I was reading this book called Meditations by Marcus Aurelius. And Marcus Aurelius was a Roman emperor, and he followed a philosophy known as Stoicism. And again, if you are interested, do more research on what that is, because Stoicism was very interesting. And a couple weeks ago, I'd written that Tan Mandhan essay, which was about Indian philosophy. And I ended up writing about what it's like to experience things so deeply and different philosophies of life and how they contradict and how they all come back to these things. All the philosophies I follow come back to these things. Take care of yourself before you try taking care of others. Once you take care of yourself, do your best to help those around you without sacrificing yourself. And then the last thing is, do not worry about what you cannot control. As long as you do your best, you will live a successful life. And honestly, I've read so many philosophy books, and if I boil it down, those 3 statements is my life's philosophy, what I've learned from Stoicism, Indian philosophy, meditations, and things like that. So I wrote my supplemental essay for Harvard. It was an optional essay, all about that. So I was really proud of that one as well. I think being well-read actually helped me a lot with these essays, because I had a lot of like places I could pull from. Yeah, and so the stuff I didn't mention, like those essays, because I actually haven't read my essays since I applied to all these colleges, and it's been about 4 or 5 months. So the ones I remembered, they truly touched me. So these were the ones which like stuck out to me, and the rest, that means, didn't pull me emotionally as much, which is probably why I didn't get in. But I would say I'm proudest of my Stanford application. That application was like perfection to me. I don't think it could have been better than what it was. So yeah, those were my essays, those were my stats, and that was just my journey. So if you have any questions, leave a comment. I just wanted to share because people will ask me, what did I do? So that's what I did. Obviously we're all very unique. Like, I don't know anyone who reads the same books I do, from Percy Jackson starting all of this mythology obsession to like Walt Whitman and poetry and Emily Dickinson and fantasy books. Like the last really good book I read was The Hands of the Emperor by Victoria Goddard. I highly recommend that book. But yeah, please leave a comment if you have a question. Thanks.